Okay, this is the gardening class for the spring semester 2023, and I want to go over with you what we have done previously in the course and what I am requiring in assignments. Now, I asked that students that you please get a hold of your state extension service. This is actually a service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. There were several agricultural colleges which have now become universities. Utah State University in Utah is one of them. Michigan State University in Michigan is another that I know of. Iowa State University and so forth. That were established as agricultural colleges. And one of their responsibilities was to help people, not only the farmers, but ordinary citizens in their gardening abilities, and that's where the extension service started. Now, this is a planting guide that I received from the Utah State University Cooperative Extension Service in Washington County, where I live here in Utah. It's a home gardening and planting guide for the St. George area. You can receive the same type of information from your extension service in your local office wherever you live. Growing vegetables, this is what's in it. Does it pay? Planting your garden, summer and fall planting, fertilizers and compost, insects, diseases, and pests. Okay, then it has a planting guide in it. And I would encourage you please to get this from your extension service wherever you live. Find out where it is. Google it. Ask people, whatever you need to do to find it, because if you're going to grow a garden, especially outside, you're going to need this information. For example, it starts off Home Gardening Planting Guide for the St. George Area Group A. Now, we are also in a planting zone known as 8A. Okay, there are planting zones all throughout the country because of similar types of temperature, humidity, growing season, and so forth. But this is specific to the St. George area, and that is priceless. And so if you can get something like this for your area where you live, that would be very good. For example, turnips, purple top and white globe. Now that's different varieties of turnip and what variety grows here and grows well. And that's something else you want to know, and the Extension Service can help you with that. Radishes, Cherry Belle, White Icicle, or Champion. Peas, Laxton Progress, Little Marvel, Wando, Sugar Snap. Okay, now when can these things be planted? Well, turnips, anytime in February through March 15th, and they're going to do fairly well. It tells you what to plant, whether to plant the seed or to plant the plant. Okay, maturity, days or years or months to maturity, and the depth at which you should plant it. That's a wealth of information. And so, okay, radishes from February 1st to April 1st. Peas, January to February. Well, sometimes we start our peas in November, and that works out very well. Onions, February to March 15th. Well, onions can be planted in the fall too. In fact, onions will survive year-round here. Our best onion planting was shortly after we moved here, and we had a super crop of onions that overwintered, as well as carrots that overwintered, and we could go out to our garden and pluck them up. Yes, we had to have a frost cloth on them at times, but when the temperature was good, which it is here in St. George at times, then we were able to harvest all year round. Cabbage, February through March, you want to plant for that. You want to plant for onions instead of seeds. Broccoli, a plant again, asparagus, and so forth. These are Group A hardy type. That means if it frosts a little bit, they're probably going to survive. Now Group B are semi-hardy, and Swiss chard, potatoes, kale, lettuce, leeks, herbs, most of them, cauliflower, carrots, that would include broccoli and Brussels sprouts, because those are all cruciferous. Those can be planted anytime from February 20th, which was a couple days ago, through March 1st. You need a plant to do that, however, so you want to go to a nursery to do it, unless you have grown your own plant from seed beginning the first of the year. And beets, those are the semi-hardy, 1 to 2 weeks after group A. Well, then you get into group C that are tender, that you don't want to have frost, because if you have frost with them, they're probably going to die. Well, that's a little bit about planting guides and the extension service and so forth. It's well worth it to have a planting guide from the extension service like this. Also, you can get information from your nursery, wherever you are, from your plant nursery. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about why of gardening, and I want you to take your notes. Now, if you have gotten such a guide from your extension service, I would like you to take a picture of it and send it to me. That was your first assignment. And there are assignments in this class. It's just like any other. Just because it's virtual does not mean it isn't important. It's probably more important than most of your classes. Now, I want to talk, like I said, a little bit about why we garden, a little bit more about why we garden. And I want you to take notes. This is your second assignment. Your second assignment is to take these notes, to rewrite them shortly after you watch this video and you take the notes. Maybe you want to watch it a couple of times, and that's really important with a video. You can stop the video and write down the notes. You don't have to have a one-time through situation. So, okay, now, why garden? Numero uno, number one, the prophets have asked us to. In fact, we were told by President Kimball and President Benson to plant a garden, and it's been reiterated ever since then. The problem being that someday we're going to have to survive on what we can grow, and we need to grow as much as we can on our own property. Now, that can drive you crazy. I have had almost every square inch of my lot cultivated at one point. As we got older, that was impossible for us to keep up with unless that was our only job. Well, we also teach, and we know the Lord wants us to teach, so that's what we're doing. And we're growing as much as we are physically able on our own property to provide our own food. Now, why? Why garden? Well, yes, because someday it's going to be necessary for us to be able to supply our own needs and our own wants. But it's more than that. It has to do with nutrition. And if you have good soil, which we're going to talk about in another class, if you have good soil, you are going to have nutrient-dense, nutrient-rich plants and food. Okay? Now that is important. Also, it is important. There is a wealth of information these days that says, do not eat processed food. Eat real food. Why? Well, my first inclination to have an idea of why that was so important, not to eat the boxes and the cans and the sacks and so forth, the food that is loaded with chemicals and so forth, came from this book by Barbara Reed Stitt. I think you can still read it on Amazon, on Kindle, but Food and Behavior. She was a parole officer, and she hit upon the idea to have her parolees eat a certain diet, and it was all real food, not processed food. And she had 100% success with her parolees. I don't know if you know what the word recidivism is, but recidivism is returning to a former behavior, a bad behavior. It's like the dog eating its vomit, so to speak. What she found out was, and what others found out was, that if they ate a highly processed diet, they returned to their bad ways. Now, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, and I want to go to this one, which is interesting. And I read a whole book on this at once, but I want to read you this paragraph. It's in the Blood Pressure Solution by Dr. Marlene Merritt, and I want to read this paragraph to you. Processed foods. A manufactured food is something that has been heavily processed in a factory and cannot be found in nature. This includes, but is not limited to, bread. Now, there are certain things put in bread, commercial bread, that aren't good for us, folks, that will eat away the lining of our intestines and cause us problems there. So this is the list: bread, pasta, candies and desserts, instant mixes, TV dinners, soft drinks, fruit juices, and energy drinks. Foods that are skimmed, enhanced, enriched, or otherwise adulterated. Processed vegetable oils, including canola, corn, and soybean. Olive is okay. Coconut's okay. They aren't processed to the extent that these others are. Things that are fried and broiled at high temperatures, you don't want to eat food like that. Artificial sweeteners, hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated fats, trans fats, energy bars, protein shakes, and other health foods, preservatives like benzoic acid, artificial additives including dyes, preservatives, flavors, even natural flavors, MSG in particular. Oh my gosh, there's so many names for MSG. Google that if you want. Find out what the names for MSG are. Don't ever buy anything with MSG in it. Many of the additives are toxic to our nervous system, and that's a reason for a lot of illness and learning disabilities, quite frankly. Now, if these foods ever had any nutrients in them, most or all of them are removed and replaced with chemical additives to provide taste and often to make them addictive. Addictive. I know this sounds like the stuff of conspiracy theorists, she says, but manufactured foods bind to the chemical receptors in our brains in just the same way that drugs like cocaine and heroin do, making us crave them and want more of them. And then you wonder why you don't have the willpower to resist things you know are bad for you. So let me read that again. Manufactured foods bind to the chemical receptors in our brains in just the same way that drugs like cocaine and heroin do, making us crave them and want more of them. And then you wonder why you don't have the willpower to resist things you know are bad for you. Well, I'm going to refer to a scripture, and it kind of says about the same thing. Satan has tried to destroy our agency. He tried to destroy it in the war in heaven before we came here. He wanted all the power and the glory for himself. And he is still at work trying to destroy our agency. And the food we eat is one of the ways that he can do that. Now listen to this. In the 89th section, the Word of Wisdom in the Doctrine and Covenants, page 175, if you want a reference for that. Okay, the Lord gives us this word of wisdom to be sent by greeting, not by commandment or constraint, but by revelation and word of wisdom in the will and of God in the temporal salvation. That means the salvation of our physical beings, right? Given for a principle with promise, adapted to the capacity of the weak and the weakest of all saints who are or can be called saints. And this is the interesting verse that I want to say. Behold, verily, thus saith the Lord unto you. This is verse 4. In consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days. Now that's what she says. She doesn't want to sound like a conspiracist, but the Lord said it first. In consequence of the evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days, I have warned you and forewarned you by giving unto you this word of wisdom by revelation. And it goes on, of course. And then there's the promise, the wonderful promise at the end, that all saints who remember to keep and do these sayings, walking in obedience to the commandments, shall receive health in their navel and marrow in their bones, and shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge, even hidden treasures, and shall run and not be weary, and shall walk and not faint. And I, the Lord, give unto them a promise, that the destroying angel shall pass them by as the children of Israel, and not slay them. So when the plagues are upon us, if we observe the word of wisdom and how the Lord tells us to eat. He doesn't say any, what he says is the foods that he's provided for us. And so processed foods are out. And so growing our own foods is really important. Another thing I wanted to mention about that is growing organic food. All right? Growing organic food. That is very important too. And the reason it is important, it's because of the pesticides and chemicals that they add even, into corn and everything. If you are familiar or not with, excuse me, I'm trying to find the right place here. Okay, organic. Reason for organic. Organic food is defined as being produced without the use of pesticides or man-made fertilizers, growth regulators, or livestock feed additives. There are two main reasons that people might choose to eat organic. One is that a lot of people are uncomfortable ingesting chemicals into their bodies, especially since the chemical industry isn't regulated as aggressively as many people would like. The second reason people eat organic is because the food they're eating has more nutritional value and therefore supports health better. You can find the opposite information on the internet, and sorry, that is misinformation. Organic food is better, it tastes better, and it does have more nutrition. Now, in the garden, as I mentioned before, you want to make sure that your soil is good, and so we're going to talk about that. We're in one of our gardening classes. So you want organic, which is natural. And I also want to point out to you this Dirty Dozen by Organic Guide. You can also Google that on the internet. These are plants which hold the pesticides and herbicides, okay? And so you're going to get a big dose of them if you do not buy organic. And you might want to take this down. Strawberries, apples, nectarines, peaches, celery. We had a marvelous bumper crop of celery last year. Grapes, cherries, spinach, tomatoes, sweet bell peppers, cherry tomatoes, and cucumbers. Now that's a list that you don't want to buy except buy organic. The Clean 15, the ones that have the least effect of pesticides. This is something else that you might be interested in. Avocados, onions, eggplant, and there are good ways to fix eggplant, by the way. Sweet corn, asparagus, honeydew melon, pineapples, mangoes, grapefruit, cabbage, papayas, cantaloupe, sweet peas frozen, kiwi, and cauliflower. Now, it's best to eat organic. It's best to eat from your own garden. You're going to avoid problems with processed foods if you do. That is enough for today. Please, 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 if you haven't already, get that information from the Extension Service. Look at the list of things that can be grown in your area and then decide what you want to grow. Also decide what you're going to grow so that you can sustain yourselves. We did sprouts last time, and we will come back and talk about sprouts in the next video, and we will also talk about wheatgrass and microgreens, because wheatgrass, the juice from wheatgrass juice is the most nutritious food on the planet, and you'll be amazed at what's in it and how to grow it and so forth. So we're going to come back, and that's something that you can do in-house if you don't have any gardening area. So I will see you next time, and please, number one, get the information from the Extension Service for your area, take a picture of it and send the picture to me. Number two, make sure you have excellent good notes from this lesson, and take time to rewrite them so that they're legible, so you can read them. And what I want you to do is put them in a notebook, in a sheet protector, okay, after you've rewritten them and made them really nice. Do that, but before you put them in the sheet protector, send me a picture of them. all your notes. Whether it's 3 or 4 pages, I don't care. I want to see all your notes. And put your name on every page. Please, people. That saves me an awful lot of time if you have your name on the paper. Okay, thank you, and I will see you next Monday, or you'll see me next Monday in another gardening course.